Focus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. It's John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School, and we are answering another community question from our YouTube comments. So thank you very much for all of you who are engaging with us here on YouTube, doing the likes, the subscribes, and again, commenting, because it's really, really great to be connected with community in this way, but also to kind of give back and to kind of give that response when you kind of invest the energy communicating with us. We want to try and respect that as much as we can, and wherever possible, communicate back. So that is the purpose and that is the intent of this video. And the community question we have follows on the back of some of the series of videos I have been talking about, where I talk about consent in spiritual working, spiritual sensitivity, and spiritual sensibility. And the question came from Kay, and Kay was wondering, I would like some talk really on personal sovereignty, what it means, how to gain it, and its role in spiritual paths, etc. Great question, Kay, and thank you very much for reaching out, and thank you very much for kind of communicating and asking it. As I've mentioned before, I do love questions. I love a good question, and every question is an opportunity to kind of consider things from another person's perspective, to kind of look at things outside of your own understanding, and to kind of gain a greater insight into not just yourself but also the world around you. So I do love questions, and this question is something that is very important, and I didn't explain it. I didn't kind of define it previously. I do talk about personal sovereignty a lot in the video where I talk about how I met the Morrigan and then how I met the Dagda. You know, a big part of my interaction with deity revolves around my personal sovereignty. But if I don't take the time out to define that, then it can get lost in translation. And as a bard, I respect the power of words, but it's important to get a good understanding of definition and a shared understanding of definition before you can have good communication. So I think the best place to really start with this is to hit up a definition, to actually talk specifically definition. And the one I like is actually from Wikipedia. And if you're looking up for personal sovereignty, you kind of need to look up self-ownership. So I have it jotted down here. Self-ownership, also known as sovereignty of the individual or individual sovereignty, is a concept of property of one's own person, expressed as a moral or natural right of a person to have bodily integrity and to be the exclusive controller of one's own body and life. So I really like that one, because it is this concept that you own you. You don't just exist in this world, you actually own your own existence. And that to me is very empowering. That concept is very empowering, but it's also something that generates a certain amount of responsibility. And so if we kind of talk about the concept of sovereignty, especially in the Irish context, most people think about it from kingship or queenship, you know, or chieftain, this right to rule. And in the Irish history and mythology, we have a number of different circumstances where we see sovereignty in practice, but sovereignty also involves responsibility. It involves authority, yes, but it involves responsibility, and it revolves around, and it also involves accountability. So one of the most common ways that we see it in the Irish mythology is the fact that for there to be a healthy Ireland, the king or the ruler would need to be bound or wedded to a goddess of sovereignty. And in those instances, it's sovereignty as an expression of the land and the rightness of the land and the connection to the other world, or on Sailella as well. And so the last kind of two of the Danann kings, the grandsons of the Dagda, are married to three goddesses of sovereignty, which is Banva, Fodla, and Eru. Their three names still exist upon Ireland. I've mentioned it in my talk about the two of the Danann. I mentioned Amergin, the bard, probably in being a bard. And he promises that, you know, the goddess's name will forever be on the island. And so the Irish for Ireland is Era, and Era comes from Eru, the goddess. And so this concept of sovereignty is about union and responsibility, because we do see other examples in the lore where kings don't keep in right relationship with the other world, or they violate the rules and the expectations of sovereignty, and the country suffers. Some of the actual, it's postulated, in fact, some of the bog bodies, like some of the oldest kind of, remains, archaeological remains that were uncovered, I think, was it Car? I don't have the archaeology in my head right this moment. But it's believed that, they were kings or chieftains who, in some way hadn't done the job right and then were sacrificed into the bog to make right for the fact that, there needs to be that healthy union of sovereignty. So there's public sovereignty, which is about, a collective interest or a well-meaning or a group interest. But when we talk about personal sovereignty, it is this ownership of self, this right to own yourself, to be your life, to every aspect of your existence, your body and your life. And in the ownership of that, you're also empowered, but you're also responsible. So when it comes to answering the question for Kay, the function of personal sovereignty is about enforcing boundaries. It is about having the level of healthy ego about yourself, that you know who you are. You have chosen who you are, how you interact in any given situation. And, you accept, like, it's not that we exist without consequence, but we accept the responsibility of the consequence based on our actions. And it's that idea of kind of total personal responsibility, which also empowers us in that way. And so I often say that if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, they're not just ignoring a rule, they're showing disrespect to you as a fundamental person or as a being. And so that is kind of a function of personal sovereignty for me when I express it in that way. And so, like, I'm trying to come up with an example of it. Yeah, I'm personally responsible for my own mental well-being and my own emotional well-being. I own that. I'm responsible for it. I'm empowered by it. I'm debilitated by it, depending on which way my emotions are going. No one else is responsible for my emotional well-being. I might be able to get counselors to help me. I might have friends who support me, but the ownership of that is on me. In the same way that, my opinion, the power of my word, as I express it through, say, electoral ballots, as I vote within my country and express it, I am empowered by that because I have a voice. I am entitled to that expression. And so I'm responsible for the use of that power. Even here within this kind of platform, great. People turn up and hear me talk and hear me rant. I'm responsible for the expression of what I rant about, what I talk about. And if I'm not, doing my best to lift people up, to help people out, then I'm just part of the problem. And so the idea of respect, I give respect and I deserve respect. That's a function of personal sovereignty. And so being able to develop this function, develop towards this idea of personal sovereignty, has to start with a healthy ego. Now, healthy ego is not just confidence in yourself. No, it's not just being full of yourself or egotistical in a negative way. It is understanding who you are on every level. Even your flaws, or probably especially your flaws and your failings, those shadow aspects of self, those areas that, you're not the greatest at, your weaknesses, your vices, your flaws, everyone has them. But by embracing that and accepting that and owning that, you move closer to this fullness of ego sense, this, and I'm talking about it in the psychological sense, this ability to be 100% within you within any moment, taking the full ownership of self, the full responsibility and the full power of self in any given moment. And so when you have done that work, when you're aware of your flaws so they can't be used against you, when you're aware of your strengths so you can stand fully in your power, then you're able to kind of define your personal sovereignty through that for yourself. And that means that from a spiritual point of view, as you begin to grow and engage in spiritual relationships and spiritual practice, you're less likely to be taken advantage of or manipulated or caught out. Not saying that the deities would or the spirits or guardians would, but some people from time to time do. we have probably all heard stories, especially in pagan communities, where someone is on their spiritual journey, they're beginning to figure it out, they have their first awakenings, their first connections with deity, and then some individual takes advantage of that, takes advantage of the trust, takes advantage of the spiritual growth, and takes advantage of the person. So it's common, unfortunately, and it shouldn't happen, but it does. So this concept of personal sovereignty, this concept of owning yourself fully, your bad stuff as much as your good stuff, your weaknesses as much as your strengths, means that you, in your wholeness and in your entirety of being, are in a much better position to have a balanced spiritual relationship. That's what I mean by personal sovereignty when it comes to relationship with deity. And that is kind of a fundamental cornerstone of this concept of core-quiveness, this right relationship that we espouse here at the Irish Pagan School. If you're going to be connecting with deities, Irish deities, any deities, you need to be doing it from a place of honest truth with yourself first. Because then no matter what comes from the connection, from the relationship, you'll be able to work forward from that foundation of trusting yourself first, belief in yourself first. And so it means that, you know, someone like me called across the country to go visit the Morrigan for the first time was able to stand in her fitted bow down in that darkness. When presented with an option to work for her, I was able to say no. Thanks, but no. I may have shot finger guns, and I still do sometimes at her altar. She has my love, she has my respect. But I was in such a position to be able to say, no, actually, I don't need that right now. And when it came to the Dante approaching me, and, you know, I was aware of his intent towards me, and I was like, yeah, okay, getting to know him. When it got to the point that he was offering vocation and I wasn't ready for that, I was strong in my own sense of self and my own understanding of my weaknesses and my strengths to be able to say, no, thank you. And then when it was later, when I was able to, when I was more confident in my abilities, when I had that sense of structure and stability and, in a way, need, then I was able to go to the Dagda and say, listen, let's form an agreement based off of a right relationship, based off of a built relationship, and based off a foundation of truth within myself, of ownership of myself, of my own life, of every part of me. And that truth, that kind of fundamental foundational truth of self, is something that really can stand us, not just in our relationships with deities, but in our relationships everywhere in the world, with colleagues, with friends, with family. If we're able to be 100% aware of our good stuff as much as our bad stuff, and be able to take responsibility, this personal responsibility, if we're able to stand empowered in our own truth, then no matter what comes, we will always be going forward from our strongest position, which is being the best version of ourselves we can be. Because that's what this is all about. You are a unique expression of humanity in this existence. You are finite. You're born, you'll live, and you'll die. We are all mortal. But it's what we do along that journey that makes it all worthwhile. It's how we grow, how we change, that shifts our narrative, that shifts our story. And so why not make it the best story it can be? Why not strive to be the best version of yourself? And I know the only way you can become the best version of yourself is knowing yourself fully, truthfully. And that shit's hard. It's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it and we'd live in a utopian society. But the people who want to grow, the people who want to kind of challenge themselves and face into their own darkness, as Jung would say, it's the shadow side of self, you know, and learn to embrace and learn to become empowered by that. Those people can find a stronger truth. And it doesn't stay the same, by the way. It's not that you find your true name or, you know, your underlying name and that is it forever. You know, we grow and we change all of the time. And so this is a lifelong process of self-awareness. And so I hope that answers your question, Kay Giddens. It's a really great one. And it's not an easy one, but it's a very important one. Personal sovereignty has to start with respect. Respect for yourself, belief in yourself, ownership of self, empowered by yourself, but also responsible for yourself. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers the question. It's a fascinating one. I'm really, really grateful for you sharing it. And if anyone else has something that they would like me to talk about, if anyone else thinks I have an opinion that they would like to hear, please do pop it in the comments. Please do let me know. I will do my best to kind of, well, I go through the comments all the time, you know. I'm still there, folks. I'm still kind of like, I posted the video. Did we get comments? Because that's part of my madness at the moment. But I do read them. I do appreciate them. Thank you very, very much, all of you. But I do love a good question because, again, it's a gift. It's an opportunity for me to consider things outside of my own perspective. Or if I need to kind of give my opinion on something, I got to be sure of what I'm fucking talking about if I'm going to record a video on it. So again, thank you very much. Gurav Milamakas from me, John O'Sullivan in the Irish Pagan School. Until next time, look after yourself, take care of yourself, love yourself, and I'll see you around the stories. Slán. Goodbye.